The newest NBA champs have the Baylor Bears to thank? Yeah, that's right. We'll talk about it on Locked On Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there and happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by Gametime. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on the Rogue Media Sports Network. We are surprisingly talking a lot about the 2021 National Championship team today, but through two different angles. And I promise they're new and exciting. It's just weird that these two things about the same team came up this week, but they are very relevant to the present day of basketball and Baylor basketball for sure. And a little bit more about March Madness in general. It's getting bigger, potentially, which probably will happen. Is that actually good, though? We'll take a look. So basketball heavy episode today. We will start with the big news of the sporting world this week. Of course, I know a lot of Baylor fans up in the Metroplex area were not happy about it. And this is not a Celtics segment, but there is something very intriguing that is linking the new NBA champs, the Celtics, to the 2021 national champs in Baylor men's basketball. Because Joe Mazzulla, the Celtics coach, is very good friends with John Jacobs, the former assistant coach at Baylor, now going into his first year as the head coach at FAU. Jacobs was in Mazzulla's wedding. Like, that's how close we're talking. And Jacobs did an interview with my partner, Matt Mosley, on Obstructed View with Matt Mosley from Rogue Media Network as well. And, they talked about that friendship a little bit and how often they talk and things like that. And Jacobs said, we talked about 10 days ago because it was right before the finals, and Joe called me and asked how we handled the 2021 Final Four and sought advice from John Jacobs about his time at Baylor and how Joe can use that at the NBA level with the Boston Celtics. And I found this fascinating for a couple different reasons, but ultimately it makes a ton of sense. Okay, because the first thing I found interesting was that Joe Mazzulla played in the Final Four. He was there in 2010, and weirdly enough, was one incorrect block call away from facing Baylor in that Final Four in Scott Drew. But Joe Mazzulla was in a Final Four with West Virginia in 2010. So I'm thinking, what does he need to learn about this big a moment to talk to John Jacobs about? And I started to see the similarities, and it comes with mainly that you called them in between the conference finals and the finals. There's about a week in between those two series. And when you think about Baylor in 2021, they didn't go back to Waco to practice and then flew out to a Final Four. They were in a bubble for 3 weeks. And so they essentially had the same thing, where I think it was actually 5 days of sitting around preparing for your next opponent, obviously, but trying to keep the outside noise blocked and keep yourself insulated while there is this layoff between two series. So, okay, that makes some sense, because obviously going to the Final Four normally it's a different deal. There's still plenty of distractions, but you go home, you go back to campus, you go back to class. That was not the case in 21. You did your classes online. You stayed in the same hotel. There were less people there than there were before, and it all kind of starts to, in a way, almost puts more distraction in there of this is all that you're thinking about 24 hours a day. Whereas, going back to campus, there's other things going on. So I think that's one part of it. The other is we look at the Celtics being the team that was supposed to win the title all season long. They had missed out a couple of times before, and they really cruised all the way to the finals. And you look back at that 21 Baylor team, and it's pretty similar. This was a group that was together the year before. They didn't lose in the Final Four or anything because there was no tournament. So they felt like they had missed an opportunity. You remember, there was a couple of guys that almost did not come back. Maceo Teague declared for the draft, and Jared Butler declared for the draft. And they both ended up coming back, which was huge. And from then on, Baylor had the expectation to go all the way to the Final Four. We remember that everyone was talking about Gonzaga, and that's true. Gonzaga was undefeated going into the championship game and all that. But Baylor was running mates with them the whole season. Like, everyone knew that this was a Final Four team. And so to handle those high expectations throughout the entire season and to not blink, to keep the tunnel vision, to keep the main thing, and in the basketball sense, the main thing, which was to win the national championship. Those guys had those lofty goals. Baylor had not been to a Final Four in 70 years and had never won the national championship. And yet these guys had that in their minds all season. And how do you handle that? It's a lot easier to be the underdog when nobody's expecting anything from you. It's not nearly as easy to be the team that everyone expects to be there and then to actually be there. So I found that fascinating that that's what the Celtics coach was looking to Baylor for. And it made me really appreciate that Baylor team even more, as if I could, appreciate them more than I already had. Like, that was an amazing connection of, wow, here we are talking about how great this NBA team is. And really, Baylor had that at the college level. And to think of my time at Baylor, which had ended before the 21 national championship, and I thought of my years at Baylor where it didn't matter the sport until my senior year when women's basketball won the national championship. It felt like we lost every big game. College game day, Oklahoma football, loss, right? College game day, Kansas basketball, lost. Every time we were playing Kansas, we'd lose, or, we'd have these top 10 matchups in football, we'd lose. Thankfully, we moved on from that. And a big reason why is that 2021 national championship team. They were not afraid of the lofty expectations. They looked them dead in the eye, and they went out there and they did it. And they were underdogs really one game that year. And they were like considerable underdogs if you look at who everyone was picking. It's not like they were 15-point dogs, but nobody was picking them to beat Gonzaga. And they went out there and did it. And that just sounds a lot like this Celtics thing, right? They were the best team all year long. And then all of a sudden in the finals, these analysts start picking the Mavs over and over and over again, whether it was right, wrong, or otherwise. That's exactly what Baylor went through in 21. So the only conclusion I can come to is the reason why a team just won an NBA championship is because Baylor had won a national championship before them. Baylor basketball walked the championship so that the Celtics could run. I just think that's really cool. And it just reinforces that this was absolutely one of the best college basketball teams of this century. I know there's discourse on that on social media, and they might not be number one, but don't let anybody tell you they're not close. Okay? It's them. It's 2018 Nova. It's 2009 North Carolina. In some order, they were that good. And we get reminded of that. And I hope, long may it continue. Long may we get reminded year in, year out for the rest of our natural born lives. And hopefully they'll have some other examples of Baylor basketball national championship teams to choose from. And also today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Gametime. I always say this, but if you're looking for a not fun ticket buying experience, a hassle of a ticket buying experience, don't use Gametime. Okay. That's how I got to the NBA finals, and I probably deserved it. The Mavs won that game by 40 points, but I was there because of Gametime. Okay. And I knew what I was paying because I saw the all-in pricing that they show on their website. Okay. It shows you the total upfront. No surprise fees when you're going to check out. We know how much difference that could be. That was a difference of a couple $100 on other sites. But Gametime was honest with me with that all-in pricing. They also had flash deals and zone deals going out throughout the week, and they have some of the best last-minute deals. You can save up to 60% off buying last minute for, it's not just sports, concerts, comedy shows, theater, anything with a ticket. Gametime's going to help you out, and they do have the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime's going to credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, for $20 off your first purchase. So download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. And speaking of that 2021 championship team, this again came up organically this week, but we had a guest yesterday on the Matt Mosley Show, Aditya Malhotra, who is now an assistant coach with FAU and John Jacobs. But he was a GA and an assistant at Baylor, went off to the Phoenix Suns player development for the last couple of years where they've had a lot of Baylor guys. Now he's back in the college game. And I caught some really interesting anecdotes from him because, this is as popular as Baylor players have been in the NBA ever. They've never had this many. And guys who I think even some of us didn't think would be NBA guys have stuck around. Ones like Ish Wainwright, ones like Royce O'Neal. Those guys are still in the league 7, 8, 9 years later. I think that's fascinating. They fashioned really good careers for themselves. Even Kendall Brown, the Pacers were raving about him in a piece this week for a guy who didn't see a lot of playing time this year. They see him as part of their future. Obviously, with Sohan down in San Antonio. And what I found so impressive was AD Malhotra said, these guys are ready for the NBA once they go through the Scott Drew experience. And, the 2, 3, 4 years with Scott Drew, these guys are ready. And he was saying, some of my first practices with the Suns that I was able to observe, like they were talking about the same thing Scott Drew was. Things that we drilled in practice. And it's not just the basketball stuff, but mentality things and attitude things. They're using that at the next level, which I think is just such a good testament to this Baylor basketball program, which we will be saying very nice things about once again. I mean, I never think to say bad things about them as a program, but it just goes to show you how far they've come over the last 5 or 6 years, especially. And that was also another thing I wanted to get in with AD was talking about that shift. I've talked about it on this show so many times. I think a lot of you know what I'm talking about. I look at my senior year, which was 18-19. They were a really gritty team. I thought they were going to finish in last in the Big 12 after Tristan Clark got hurt. They did not. They made the tournament. They won a tournament game. They made it to the round of 32. And then the next year, they went from scrappy, decent enough tournament team to, holy crap, this team won however many straight, like 20 straight games. They should go to the Final Four. The season gets canceled. And then they win the national championship, win the Big 12 again the next year. They go become a 1 seed, and all of a sudden they're this national program. And so I asked AD, because I was like, you came in around the same time as Jacobs, and then Alvin Brooks right around the same time too, and then Bill Peterson a couple years later. I think he came in that 18-19 season to go along with Jerome Tang and Scott Drew. So what was the switch? What was it that changed Baylor from scrappy, nice program also rans in the Big 12 to the class of this conference and national championship team? And AD Malhotra, man, he had a surprising answer at who was the one who helped them out in that. Was there something tactical that was different from before?
We stopped playing zone.
All right.
Kim Mulkey would always remind us that there's only one coach that's ever won a national championship that played zone. So that was a big part of it. And shout out to Kim Mulkey. She was right. We definitely made a switch defensively. I remember after we lost to, I think we lost to Gonzaga in the round of 32. It was the year of Makai Mason and King McClures last year, and we lost to Gonzaga. And I remember Scott coming in, and this is right after Jacobs' first year, and he came in and he said, "Hey, we're going to study other people's defense, and we're gonna find a defense that we're really we're sold on, and then everyone is going to learn it really well."
Wow. I mean, look, not that we doubted ever that Kim Mulkey was a genius of a basketball coach and knows how to win at the highest level of college basketball, but it's funny that she was the one saying, "Hey, There's only one Jim Boeheim. There's only one college coach who's ever won a championship playing his own defense. And she's right. She's really right about that. And it's something that I think a lot of college basketball fans were frustrated about with Boeheim for years. It was like, try something else. It only worked once because you had Carmelo Anthony, right? And that's what Baylor was for years. It's kind of easy to forget now because even when they're defensively challenged, they don't throw a lot of zone. Certainly hadn't the last few years up until this season where they used it situationally. But that's what Scott Drew was. He was a zone defense guy. And look, it helped them. It certainly elevated the program in that they were able to win games and compete in the best conference in America and can, annually make the tournament because of that. But they weren't going to hit that next level until they went man to man. And it was that group of guys. It was Davion Mitchell. It was Jared Butler. It was Maceo Teague. They were saying, Coach, you gotta let us do this. It's like in the basketball movie Glory Road, where Don Haskins is trying to be really, strict disciplinarian, very fundamental basketball. And he sees the players that he's brought in to play kind of a schoolyard game. And Bobby Joe Hill says, man, you got to let us play our game. We will take you there if you let us play our game. That's the same thing. They said, Coach, let us play man to man. I promise you we'll get you there. And they did that. They got them there. But it's Kim Mulkey who is out there giving them that nudge. And it really, you look at it, you could see the assistants' fingerprints all over it as the game, as their style started to change. And Jacobs was right in the middle of that. They were a zone defense and post up offense for years. And again, it worked. It got Jonathan Motley to be an All-American. But when Tristan Clark went down in 2019, they said, we've got to switch to spacing and outside shooting. And they had the team to do it then. That's a big reason why they went to the tournament and won a game. And they certainly had the personnel for that afterwards with Butler and Mitchell and Teague. And then you throw in a Matthew Meyer type and Adam Flagler and LJ Cryer the next year. Like that's when you have it. And we could probably thank Kim Mulkey for that overall just switch in style. That was the start of the change. Not that the assistants probably weren't banging that drum too. They probably were. But I just think that's funny. We can thank Kim Mulkey once again, and that great lineup of assistant coaches that a great coach in Scott Drew set up for the Bears. Pretty interesting to kind of look back on that, at least, I think. And I know Scott Drew is looking for other assistant coaches in this offseason, as big as he has ever had to do. And I know he was using LinkedIn, okay? Because it's not like any other job board, okay? Helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job. I'm sure Bill Armstrong liked his situation at Link Academy. He wasn't looking for a job, but then Baylor comes up, bang. There you go. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit any other leading job site. So on LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. It allows you to hire professionals like a professional. They know that small businesses are wearing so many different hats. They don't have the time and resources to hire. That's why they're trying to make the process easier. And that's why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. And rounding out this basketball frenzy of a day, we did get some news about the NCAA tournament here in the past 24 hours. And that is that it's getting bigger, that it's going to expand. Look, this is a rumor, but we've come to realize what this is in college sports. There was also rumors of a bigger college football playoff for years. And as soon as they went to 12, they started talking about 16. So this is going to get bigger. And we've heard coaches talk about this in the past. In fact, I think Scott Drew once said that every team should make the tournament, which, wow, that would be wild and would really water down a regular season. So obviously not looking at that. But according to CBS Sports, the NCAA has presented that expanded tournament model that could grow to either 72 or 76 teams. 68 is not enough. We've had between 64 and 68 the last 40 years, but now it needs to be 72 or 76. Golly, guys. Why? Why does it need to be that? This is, I can usually find the good from a fan standpoint in just about any of these new NCAA things. This is just a cash grab. It just is. Like, and it's shameless and it does nothing really for the NCAA in a positive light. It's just going to, albeit a small time, but water it down a little bit. The Thursday and Friday that open the tournament are the two best college basketball days of the year. It's so great. Why are we messing with it? This is how it really gets me. The NCAA tournament is the best thing, the most perfect thing that the NCAA has. I know football is a bigger juggernaut, but how many problems do we run into there? First, it wasn't a playoff. It was the BCS and it's a computer and they're not getting it right. And then it was a 14 playoff and that wasn't enough. And now it's a 12-team playoff. And then when you think that's great, we're going to have to put automatic bids from these two major conferences. And these conferences are too good and the rankings aren't good enough. That is all the time. That is paramount in college football. And again, I love it. And so do you. But there's always a problem with college football. College basketball, when it comes to the tournament, perfect. Perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. It's still our favorite event every year. No matter what, no matter the transfer portal or the NIL or whatever other crap bugs you in the NCAA, the tournament is the tournament. And it's madness and it's awesome. So why are we messing with it? Just why? To get 6 extra teams in there? 8 extra teams? And by the way, even if you're going to do that, it's not going to do it in the way that we would like to as college basketball fans. Because, right, why do we love the tournament? Because it's not just lip service. Anybody can beat anybody in the NCAA tournament. That's why we love it. The upsets, the Cinderellas. And if you were to say, okay, we're going to expand the tournament, but what it's going to do, it's going to allow for some of those great regular season teams in the mid-majors to get into the tournament. Someone like an Indiana State this year that walked through the Missouri Valley and then lost the championship game and didn't get into the tournament. That's what it should be for. But and I know it's not going to be about that. It's going to be a way to get Porter Moser into the tournament finally. It's going to be a way for, that 69th team or 70th team that is a Power 5 team, which this year would have been Oklahoma or Kansas State or Cincinnati. We want to get them in there. And maybe those teams are better than some of the mid-majors that went in there. Undoubtedly. But that's not how it works. And if you want to be a tournament team, go better than 500 in your conference. I'm sorry that the Big 12 is this great basketball conference. I'm sorry. But 10 years ago, if I told you how good the Big 12 was going to be, would you have said, yeah, Baylor and TCU are going to be in there every year and Tech too? No, you wouldn't. But those programs figured it out. So don't come at me with that. It's not going to be better to have more Oklahomas and more Ohio States in there. I'm sorry. I did find this part of the article very interesting from CBS Sports. Additional tournament games could be a way to increase revenue as the schools seek to offset financial costs of the recent House versus NCAA decision. There's also realignment to consider. With the Big 12, ACC, SEC, and Big 10 all adding teams in 24-25, those conferences will have fewer at-large bids to share under the current structure. Is that right? I'm no math major, but I don't think that's right. The NCAA has not added teams to Division I. They've just realigned them. In fact, there's one less conference. So I don't get that. And I hope that's not a crutch to be like, hey, this is how we get Oklahoma in or Ohio State in or Maryland or whomever the hell. Because that's not right. And I would prefer, honestly, if we had some of those, 16, 15 seed mid-majors kind of play it out, duke it out the first couple of days if that's how you're going to do it. But no, it's going to be a way to get in more Power 5 teams, Power 4 teams, which I think really stinks. They've also got an ad on this website for an MMA fight on Fuse. I didn't know Fuse was still a station, a network. Anyway, that's probably where those extra NCAA tournament games are going to be. I think it's a stupid idea. I do. I know it doesn't seem like that big a jump, but I think it's not going to be the right move for the NCAA because of those things. I just don't know that we need to add more Power 4 teams to this, because that takes away from the beauty of this whole tournament. I'm sure people were saying it when they went from 32 to 64, 53 to 64, whatever it was. But anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Seriously, I'd love to get a better grasp on this and how this could be better for the tournament. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Be sure to like and subscribe. Leave a comment, even if you don't have any questions or great thoughts. That'd be awesome. Ring the notification bell so that you can get alerted whenever we drop our shows to YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you on your favorite show next week. And that, of course, is Locked On Baylor.